Meeting for Oregon City for September 7th, 2011. May I have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Neely?
Here.
Commissioner Nacita?
Here.
Commissioner Roth?
Here.
Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Commissioner Yates?
Here.
Commissioner Peterson?
Here.
Commissioner Shaw?
Here.
Commissioner Mum?
Here.
Commissioner Edgar?
Here.
And Chair Walters.
Here. Great. Moving on to item 2. Do we have any citizen comments tonight?
I think some people want to talk. Better citizens here, but want to talk to specific.
These are for non-agenda items, so if you have something to speak to on the agenda, we'll take it at the time that the agenda item comes up.
I do have something unrelated to the agenda.
Great.
You've got the names.
They're on the floor.
Okay. The first speaker is William Gifford.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And next, Jerry Herman's next. You can go ahead and stay up if you want.
Madam Chair and members of the Urban Renewal Commission, my name is William Gifford and I live in Oregon City. I just wanted to report on a fun evening that my wife and I had a couple weeks ago. We have a goal, this is a personal goal, to visit every McMinimans in the Empire. Yeah, it's ambitious, and they seem to be opening them faster than we can visit them. But we heard that there's a new one down in Wilsonville, and so we went down there. We had some other business around there, but we went down to Wilsonville to the McMinimans, and it was delightful, an enormous facility. I hope some of you have been down there, and found out that we didn't realize when we went down there, that's part of a whole complex with the Fred Meyer's down there and a couple of other restaurants, the biggest Starbucks I've ever seen in my life with booths. Anyway, quite a project. And come to find out that was done with a large assistance with Urban Renewal money. By poking around a little bit, the estimates were that they invested about $11 million into that interchange, with about $4 million coming from ODOT. And we were expecting a return of about 300 to possibly 500 jobs. And they seem to be pretty pleased with that rate of return. I'm not suggesting that we get another McMinimans in Oregon City, but I am suggesting that this esteemed body get off the dime and do something about getting jobs in this community. And I'm not suggesting that you rush into anything. God forbid, history will never record this body as rushing into anything by any stretch of the imagination. But I do certainly hope that you are moved to do something beyond just the facades. The facades in the buildings are very nice, but I think that it's desperately important that this body takes some leadership and get some jobs into our community. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you.
Thanks, William. We got him, Jerry. Thank you.
I'm wearing my City of Oregon City downtown.
Very nice.
but I'm also here to tell you about this event in Gladstone, because I think these communities used to be together in the Tri-City Chamber of Commerce, if you remember, a long time ago. Those that have no hair and institutional memory like me might remember this. And I just think it's interesting because Gladstone this year is celebrating their 100th year celebration of cityhood, founded in 1911 by a man who came across the Clackamas on the cowcatcher of an old-time locomotive, small locomotive. His name was Harvey Cross. This year there's been 9, as of this date, September 11th, events celebrating the city's centennial history. Some have been historical lectures, some have been cleanups, some have been related to the Historical Society in general, but this one is a culminating event which you're all invited to, and I invited your mayor, by the way, I'm the co-chair of this group, to be there just because we're trying to honor people that have had an impact in the area and associate and relate the various communities together on Sunday, September 11th between 1 and 6. The Army Band's going to be there, Tualatin Community Band, there'll be a barbershop chorus and quartets out of Canby, people playing Eva Emery Dye, who I'm still learning about, who had a lot to do with founding the original Chautauquas. If you're not aware of this, George Sousa, the band guy, actually wrote several songs, including one which became very famous and performed it first in Gladstone as a part of the National Chautauqua movement. There were 4 places in the country that it started. New York City, Chicago, Los Angeles, and Gladstone, and it actually continued in Gladstone until about 1931. So I just wanted you to be aware of this because I think it's a neat event, and I know you're probably doing events on September 11th. We're going to end up with a special commemorative thing with choruses and a major band doing a whole bunch of all-American songs around 5 p.m. Your trolley is important to this. Your trolley is going to be filled, we believe, with 500 people that it must shuttle around the grounds of the Seventh-day Adventist complex, which is Gladstone Park. Beautiful facility, very confusing road network. So we're making sure your trolley drivers are easily access to the route involved. So I wanted you to be aware of this. Even though I'm very active in Oregon City, I'm very pleased to see what Gladstone is doing. Also, there's a Discovery River Cruise, which had 4 people last week, now has 35. So I'm very pleased with that. It occurs on the 24th, and a salmon bake on the 17th of September. Final event will be in November, where we look at trolleys, past, present, and future with Rick Gustafson. He's the one that founded, of course, began to direct the effective efforts in Portland. So these are things that we're doing, that I see them doing in Gladstone, I want you to be aware of. So,
Sure.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jerry.
We have Richard Craven. Were you interested to speak to any agenda topics or, okay, great. So you're next on, okay, we don't have anybody. I just left okay. Moving on to agenda item 3, future agenda items.
A little bit dovetails, if I might, to what William was speaking to. Almost all of our urban renewal attention has been given to Main Street, really south of 10th, and then the Cove area and the landfill area. I think we need to talk about some visioning in the North End area. We do have at least one piece of property that's there next to the, I believe that's Urban Renewal owned, isn't it? The one next to the Kentucky Fried Chicken place. But there are also several vacant places, or there were businesses, and currently there are none. So I'd like to suggest that we do a bit of visioning on the south, on the North End, and talking both about the Washington Street, Main Street area, and talking about south of Abernathy Creek and north of 10th.
Commissioner Yates.
I was going to come up with an agenda item very similar to what you're suggesting, a little bit different, but I'm a volunteer at the Saturday market, and every Saturday I go help set up tents. I think I have this vision that I came up with while I was setting up tents there a couple of weeks ago of a Pike Street type market down here in the North End. I'm concerned about our hoops and the fact that we've got these rusty hoops down there that are an eyesore, and we haven't done anything with them for years and years and years. And it seems to me as a community, if we're looking for things to invest in, we really ought to fix things that we've got that are broken rather than trying to find something new. So I've got an idea for everybody. Imagine a Pike Street type market with year-round covered open-air sales of commodities produced in Clackamas County, easily accessible by the freeway. Imagine starting with just a basketball hoop, covered, a couple, 3 basketball courts, so kids could play there when we're not using them as a Saturday market. Move the Saturday market down. It's a board decision. The county's involved. There's a lot of moving parts. I know we've gone through this charrette type thing for the place down there before and got stuck. But I'd like to just explore. I have no idea if this is a good idea or not, but it seems so scalable and easily rampable to start small, give a covered space for the winter market, move them from downtown, where I don't think it works anyway. I live right here. I hardly ever go there. I think people driving there, having an easy, lots of parking right off the freeway, it just seems to me something we should explore in terms of using urban renewal money on our existing city property to improve a deteriorating city resource and start generating some revenues. I mean, too bad we don't have a sales tax. But, if we could figure out some way to actually generate revenue, we can certainly generate rental revenues on vacant city property if we could get people to bring their booths down there to sell local stuff. And I'm really thinking beyond just a Saturday market. I'm thinking a permanent booth where somebody's competing with, Tony's, Tony's, the fish place, and the Spicers, which you've already got sort of people coming here anyway for that kind of stuff. So I would like to see your visioning thing include a very strong reach out to the local produce people and see if we can't come up with some scalable, walk before we run kind of regional produce mart.
Thank you. Commissioner Edgar.
Thank you. Along the same line with the mayor, I would like to include into this the whole area of parking, looking at parking in our downtown area and strategizing what the impacts are if we were to build a parking structure that could get people off of some of the current parking lots, ground parking lots, and allow them to be redeveloped and off the streets, where we could try to minimize the impacts of the courthouse and the Clackamas County impacts across downtown because of the need to create an environment that's more positive to economic development and redevelopment.
Is that a separate agenda suggestion?
Yeah,
It seemed like a North End
part of
visioning.
this visioning. It's along the line, but you're looking at Abernathy area. I'm looking at parking, and from what I understand, Doug is really kind of looking the broad stroke across all of it that would probably include both parking and redevelopment. And I just want to say that parking in itself is a critical element that we need to take a serious look at. And as I understand, we've had the study, I've read the study, but economic development, I don't want to institutionalize the existing use of land for ground level parking.
Thank you. One of the future agenda items that keep coming up, and maybe might dovetail with this visioning process, is the taking a fresh look at the economic development strategy. Where are we on that effort?
Well, we've got enough work here for about 5 years if we stop right there. But seriously, I think if the commission can develop a consensus around some of these issues or all of them, you need to go back in and look at your urban renewal plan that you have now and decide which of those things you might want to consider taking off or delaying and adding some of these elements in there. Then you're probably going to need to have us find consultants for you because we don't have the staff to do all this. And we can pursue those priorities if that's what the commission, if you reach a consensus on that. Also, I got an email just a few minutes ago, and I noticed in the minutes that at the last meeting that Commissioner Walters said something about working with staff on the bylaws, so I thought I might just throw that one in there too, because
I did send those to you today.
Yeah, I just got those about 20 minutes ago. I haven't looked at them yet, but that's yet another idea, and I don't know if that's one that there's a consensus on. But
well, according to my notes from the work session, we did have consensus on taking a look at the economic development strategy and assumptions, and that we were going to try to. Yes.
I'm listening to the discussion. I agree with all of it. I understand the concerns of the city manager about clear direction, and it's a theme that has come up in the past from staff. So I think the best thing to do, Doug, if you want to, if you could phrase what you want in a motion and maybe incorporate some of these other things so we could actually vote on it and maybe get a timeline, I think that would be the most useful thing. And same thing with the bylaws. I would love a vote on the bylaws question with a date certain so we could actually have clarity and clear direction on what we're doing.
if I might add,
is this future agenda items?
Yes.
Okay, so you're looking for an expiration date as to when it's going to be on the agenda or when it's going to be done?
No, when it'd be on the agenda.
When it'll be on the agenda, okay. And I asked to be a part of the bylaws committee. Have you
There's no
formed-
committee. This is the committee.
So you sent the bylaws to us all?
No, they went to the city manager for distribution?
I have a draft right here that I just printed out. I got it at, I don't know what time I got it, but it was about an hour ago or something like that. I haven't read it yet, but I could just forward that on if the commission, I didn't know what kind of discussions that you had on that, or if there was consensus that you wanted to study your bylaws.
We haven't had a discussion.
We haven't had a
No, we
discussion on
haven't had a
it.
discussion.
Maybe a work session. A lot of these things maybe would be more appropriate to have a work session first so you can deliberate whether or not you want to study them and to what extent. And then once you decide that, we can do it.
Commissioner Yates, you had a point?
I had a meeting yesterday with David and talked about some of these things, and one of the things that I learned as a new commission member, I wasn't really aware how the agenda was generated, so I'll just share with you what I learned yesterday, and you can correct me if I'm wrong from what you explained to me. But basically what Nancy does is listen to this discussion when somebody brings up an idea like Doug's or mine or Paul's, and we talk about it, and we reach a consensus or not reach a consensus, basically in her opinion, I guess. Because I'm not sure there's. I mean,
I think it's the staff's opinion, not mine.
I'm not really sure how because we don't take a vote. I guess we don't. Sometimes I suppose we nod or not nod, but we don't really have specific agenda item suggestions because, and it's difficult because they're not in writing.
Yeah.
They're not really motions for agenda stuff, and so there seems to be on this group at least among some members that I've talked to, a frustration with things that they think are going to be on the agenda, and the city staff doesn't think they are because there hasn't been a consensus when the people who are proposing these ideas, I guess, hopefully think that there is. So there seems to be some, from my perspective at least, miscommunication on this agenda-setting exercise that we're going through. And I have a couple of agenda items today, which really I would like to see people actually look at the issue of the farmers market. We have a winter farmers market that's out in the rain. We don't need a visioning project to go build a couple of basketball hoops. I mean, it's not rocket science to decide if you want to do that or not. It's sort of I mean, it seems to me we ought to think about it and plan for it and all that kind of stuff. But it's different than an overarching visioning project which includes parking. I have a very specific idea, which is to hire a consultant for some amount of money. We can talk about it at a work session. And I'd like to see that on the agenda, that idea. And I would support a visioning thing. I thought we agreed to that last time.
Yeah, we had the visioning.
So it does seem to me that we talk about these things, and these guys are all busy, and he's setting the agenda based on what we tell him. But it's difficult for him when he only has so many hours in the day, and we've got 1,000 things we'd like to do, and we're not real clear with what we're saying we want. So I'm not sure we need formal votes with written motions, but it seems to me that would be a solution. That's pretty much what you just said.
Yeah, that's why I was raising the issue of an actual vote, to provide that clarity.
And I might also add that, if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority.
Exactly.
And our city commissioners have been through this intensely during our regular retreats with them. So, it's sometimes hard because your priority may be different than someone else's, and for staff, we're real flexible on what that priority is, but to realistically do it all at once, it would be very hard to do.
Okay, well,
I'd be happy to put forward a motion dealing with the North End. It seems like your interests are very specific on the other side. I would not include it in the motion. But I'll put forward a motion that within that North End that I defined, that we look at economic development opportunities in a highly undeveloped area that includes the mixed use of that area, and includes parking as part of that mixed use development. And put it in a very general term. Well,
and
that's my motion.
I would like to add to that. My understanding is that we did agree in July that we wanted to have somebody come in and take a look at what are the economic development opportunities. And so that's why I'm asking, because as far as priorities go, I think it would be helpful to have that kind of direction and give us a sense of priorities. And I don't think we should be undertaking these projects without having a sense of what's most important and what's going to have the biggest
I'm going to make
positive
an
effect.
assumption that our economic development coordinator is going to be very deeply involved in this process, and I would recommend that we not hire a consultant to do this until we have an economic development coordinator in
But
place.
we could talk about
Yes, we
what
could.
kind of work we
Yeah.
want to. I mean, when you talk about clear direction, I think it would be useful for us to have a discussion
I agree with you.
about what kind of work that would involve, and I think it
Right.
touches
But
on
that's
your
what-
points.
If you're mentioning bringing on a consultant, I think that's a little further down the road when we have a staff person.
Right,
that's
but I
starting.
think that the consultant still comes before the decision that you're speaking of, and so I'm just trying to
I
put it in.
wasn't talking about a decision. I was talking about a vision.
Okay.
Can we, Doug, can you put this into a motion?
I did.
Okay, then I'll second it.
Discussion.
I don't know what the motion was, so maybe we could get that
You want
again.
to try that, or you want me to?
Well, I wrote down that you want to look at the economic development opportunities in the highly undeveloped area of the North End, including mixed use and parking issues.
Is there a boundary on that?
I was talking about the essentially Abernathy Creek South and 10th Street North. Yes, including Washington Street, Main Street and McLaughlin. Yeah.
Okay, that seems to be a smaller examination than what we had previously discussed, which would be a little bit broader in nature. So are you suggesting that this
That
would...
is my motion.
Okay.
I think it makes us focus on a given area, frankly.
Okay. Is that what the group wants to do?
Question.
Yes.
How does it differ from what you and Jim agreed to last meeting?
Well, he wanted a motion form. I don't think it differs that much, but he wanted a motion form.
So basically what you're suggesting is essentially what you two, in a remarkable agreement, as I recall, last meeting, so I got to laugh. You're basically just reiterating what you suggested last time. See, this is what I think is kind of part of the confusion, is that there's no formal kind of way to set the agenda that people all sort of seem to understand and get on the same pages with. So I think that's great. I think we all gave it a head nod once.
No, well, it was Jim that asked for a motion, so I put forward one.
Okay.
I'm just a little perplexed because we've kind of decided before on things, and it's okay to decide differently. I just want to make sure that this is really the direction the group wants to take, because I'm concerned about the bigger strategy as well, and I just want to know, are we replacing the bigger examination, or are we taking a smaller piece first, or are they all going to happen at the same time?
The focus, I mean, if you're talking about the bigger piece, I regard, whatever happens in the Willamette Falls area that was formerly known as Blue Heron site, I think is a focus area on its own part, and that's going to be, part of it's going to be determined by things that are outside of any of our control, and a lot of focus is going to go into that area. But I just simply look at all these vacant lots, places where there was a rental place for U-Hauls is empty. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities that are right connected to our current Main Street that really don't depend upon some big developer coming in to a given area like Blue Heron to do it.
Right.
And that's why I made it geographically somewhat constrained.
But that seems different than what you agreed on 2 weeks ago, because it wasn't geographically constrained. Correct or not? Correct?
Yeah, and that's why I put the statement in there in terms of looking at it that way.
David Frazier has a...
I think there's a consensus that we're all confused, and I think that's a starting place. Because I'm listening to Chair Walters and the mayor. We're confused too a little bit whether we're doing visioning or economic development strategy. And please keep in mind that you do have some big projects yet in front of you, and we'd like to see some of those come to conclusion, the Cove being one of them. There may be some other opportunities that we're still having discussions on that we're not able to talk about yet. And so I think we'd like to get some things done. We're also going to be doing a citywide visioning for the Willamette Falls site, and so it's a pretty full plate, at least for the staff. So I want to try to narrow down what that motion means. Does it mean we come back in a work session and you talk about it some more and refine what the assignment is?
I think that's the thing to do. That's what I'd nod on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And I also want to clarify one thing for Chair Walters. Nancy, if usually Nancy is very disciplined with all of us, if somebody has made a suggestion and it's been endorsed as by a consensus of this body that we put something on a future agenda, it goes on there. Nancy has a running list of it, and so the economic development strategy may indeed have been on there, but it wouldn't be on there yet. It's just on there, and it's on the list, but it's not at the front of the list yet.
Right.
So I wouldn't want to assume that we didn't hear you or.
No,
hear the
I didn't. I
commission.
wasn't suggesting that. I
Yeah.
was really just trying to figure out what is the sequence of events.
Yeah. And we'll have to refine this because when you talk about economic development strategy, I can already tell that that's, in your mind, maybe a little bit different project than some of the other comments that we hear. So we'll need to try to figure out what exactly you want your staff to go do, and then, of course, we'll go do it. So sounds like we have a work session.
We have a
That's
couple
suggested.
other people that are waiting to speak.
We have
Commissioner
a
Ross?
motion on the floor.
Pardon?
We have a motion on the floor. and a
Oh,
second.
I'm sorry.
Can't you?
So in lieu of the agenda and the time, I call for the question. Thank you.
Commissioner Nocita?
Aye.
Commissioner Mum?
Aye.
Commissioner Roth?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Neely?
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Yates?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Edgar?
Aye.
Chair Walters?
Yes.
Motion passes 10 to 0.
Okay, we have a couple
You
other.
have 30 minutes left to get your agenda done.
I understand. I would like to put on the work session for a sort of a 5-year plan. This is not something that's going to happen right away. To explore the possibility of creating a covered market at the end of the Oregon Trail Museum location. Put it on a work session just to talk about it. I'd like to get Jackie here just to talk about it. Let's see where we can go with it.
Is that a motion?
So moved. I
Second.
can't move.
I'll second.
I guess I moved.
Discussion.
Can we just nod?
Call it,
I prefer.
vote for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll take
Commissioner
a vote.
Nocita?
Aye.
Commissioner Mum?
Aye.
Commissioner Roth?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Neely?
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Yates?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Edgar?
Aye.
Chair Walters?
Yes.
Okay, I have another one.
Okay, you're still on the.
I'll be brief. If I can. I've been on a high horse for a while now about communications between commissioners outside the public commission. And I drafted a 202-word thing, which I posted on the internet already, which I'd like to put again for a work session. I had a meeting yesterday, really productive meeting, I thought, for an hour with Nancy and David here about this listserv idea. And here's the proposal. Basically, the listserv, if you don't know, is simply a mechanism to send out emails. If you send an email to a listserv, it gets sent to everybody on the listserv. I'm suggesting we create a listserv for this organization. There are some legal issues. I think we need to work through those. I'd like to get a legal opinion before we go further. But here's basically what I'm proposing. A listserv for the Urban Renewal Commission. The mission statement that I'm proposing is the mission of the forum is to facilitate public discussion between commission members, to improve efficiency of our meetings, and to expand public awareness of our deliberations. I'm proposing that the moderator be the chairperson, who's already agreed to do this to me. Who can post to these? Only commission members and city staff, not citizens. Who can subscribe? Anybody, including Steve Mays. I've got proposed rules that would be very simple. Limit your discussion to purview of URC matters. Be respectful of others, and a few other kind of things. Limit your word posts, so only 250 words per post. Don't have any attachments. If you've got something that you want them to see, make it a Google Doc or offer to send it otherwise. Don't include attachments of any kinds. For the subscribers, anybody can subscribe. My vision for this would be ability to continue to communicate between meetings, have Nancy right before the meeting push a button so that all the communications are available for anybody in the audience to read. We're all up on this stuff. We don't waste our time talking. I know what Paul's going to suggest. I know what the mayor's going to suggest. We've already had an opportunity to read it and comment back and forth with each other before we come to a meeting and make a decision. That's a proposal to discuss it after legal review at a work session. That's my suggestion.
Is the motion?
That's my motion.
I'll second that.
Okay. We'll take a vote.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
usually motion, second, then discussion. My only comment is the legal opinion. We should probably get that. And do you want to have the discussion regardless of what that opinion is, or do you want to get the opinion and then decide if you want to take a work session for
I
it?
think I want the opinion first.
Okay. Is there consensus? We'll get the opinion and then
Well,
decide?
Wasn't there already an opinion from the city attorney?
That wasn't a formal written opinion. It was kind of an oral opinion based on it.
It's my firm belief that the opinion is going to be basically if you can do it, but you've got to deal with certain issues, and that's basically what he's already said. I'm convinced that if there's a will to do this, there's a legal way to do it. David's not so sure. I'd like for him to be sure. I think we need to give staff an absolute assurance that what we're doing is not going to end them up, in trouble under the open meetings law, or any of us, actually.
That's what I was going to say.
And I think basically what this idea does, by the way, is if you limit your communications to a listserv like this, then you solve the problem of having your hard drive subject to discovery when somebody says, I want all your public records, which are your email. Every time I send you an email, Doug, it's a public record. They can come ask you for all my emails that hasn't been in the public. But if I send it through the URC listserv, they're all public automatically, and everything is done. And when they ask me to see my hard drive, I just say, you don't have to. You've already got them all.
So then to your motion, would you add David's comment about we'll get the legal advice before we move forward in a work
I'm
session?
confident that legal advice is going to tell you what he's already told me. I've had a
So you're
conversation
not-
with him.
You don't want to
I
add
prefer
that?
not. My opinion is going to be he's going to tell us, I'm 95% sure that our attorney, I've already talked to him, is going to tell us that if we want to do it, we can do it. Here's what you have to do. And so what we have to do is a policy question. Do we want to make Nancy do X, Y, Z that she's not otherwise doing?
So then in lieu of the agenda, I call for the question. And so what would be the motion, please?
The motion is to put it on a work session as soon as we get the opinion.
Second.
Okay, and Commissioner Nocita?
Aye.
Commissioner Mom?
Aye.
Commissioner Roth?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Neely?
All right.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Yates?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Edgar?
Aye.
And Chair Walters.
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
you have 3 work sessions now that you voted on and approved tonight. No priority for the 3. Do you want us to pick the one that's the easiest to get the answer quickest, which is probably going to be the legal opinion, because Ed works pretty fast.
I thought we were going to have one work session with 3 items.
I think a couple of them are pretty big.
Yeah, that's true.
Pardon me? What was that?
I just said, she thought
Yeah,
we'd
no,
have one
I-
work session with 3
no.
items. I said, that
If we
some of
set up a
them could
listserv, we can have our work sessions online.
be- Not yet.
I said, if we set up our listserv, we can have some of these work sessions online.
With the DA.
I think we can probably combine the covered market with one of these items. It shouldn't. I don't think we should. I don't know. I would think that we're talking about 2 work sessions.
Yeah.
I agree.
So can we leave it to? Does anybody have a preference for which ones we?
Well, I think the 2 that you mentioned are ones that could be dealt with. I think the visioning process will take a longer work
I
session.
think so too.
And you want to wait until after we hire staff anyway, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the recommendation from this group is to put the covered market concept and the communication listserv discussion on the next work session.
Yes. I think Scott Archer is going to be talking to us about some things about getting that site ready for a major tour that's going to happen in 2013, and I think that has to be a component of that discussion too, so that we realize there's an activity that's already visualized to occur down there.
I think at the City Commission's upcoming work session.
Yes. Yes. To inform the Urban Renewal Agency as well, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
You have 20 minutes. Sorry.
All right. Ready to move on to adoption of the agenda. Item 4.
I would like to raise an issue. I was concerned when I saw the agenda that the item that we carried over that I had raised at the last meeting was placed last on today's agenda, where it could be conveniently discarded as being late and out of time during a short meeting.
Well, that's not a fair comment. I think we've taken up 40 minutes already of this work session without getting to these agenda items, and I think it's unfair to state that the staff put it so it could be inconveniently.
Mayor?
Yes.
And I don't want to presume that he meant that toward the staff. In fairness, it was on the agenda last time, and I think you're just probably worried that we're going to run out of time, because isn't
am.
that sort of what happened last time?
Yes.
Okay, so can we, I mean, in the interest of just moving this along, why don't we, if it's okay with the commission, have that discussion right now?
We have folks
and then-
waiting too. What I wanted to propose is we're having an executive session on the city commission. We have a short meeting, and we've in the past put executive sessions at the end of the meeting. And I'd like to propose
We've
to
got
the mayor
people
that we
coming
do
to the
that.
executive session. It's not going to work.
I guess we have presenters.
Yeah, we have presenters.
I move that we amend the agenda and get to this right away. I think we
Yes.
can deal with it in
Yes.
5
Okay.
minutes.
Yes.
Let's go.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we're going to take up the agenda item 5C first, disclosure of executive session minutes for the Rivers DDA negotiations.
I move that we release the executive session things. I could make a comment as about why I think that we ought to. I've been involved in negotiations all my life. I've been a lawyer for 30 years. I bought and sold I don't know how many pieces of real estate. Every negotiating strategy, every negotiating session is different, every single one. Every strategy that you come up with is based on the particulars of the situation. In this particular situation, this negotiation that occurred with CenterCal over this project, it has been a contentious, very public debate that the public is unaware of. I just had a wonderful conversation with Steve Mays this afternoon about this thing, because he sits in on the executive session thing. He's totally aware of it. I'd love to disclose to you guys what Steve thinks about this thing, but I can't, because it's all part of this executive session that I'm privileged about. I believe in my heart of hearts that the city of Oregon City will not be harmed by disclosing this. It does, in my opinion, having been a part of this record, it would, I think, really enlighten the discussion that we have on urban renewal. So I would in favor of doing it.
Thank you.
I know, which parts?
I move that we,
We had a motion.
okay, has it been seconded?
I'd like to clarify the motion if I may.
What do you want us to release?
I would like to second
That's what I
it
want
then.
to clarify. I would like to clarify, and Phil, you'll tell me if you're in favor of this, specifically waiving the privilege on the executive session discussions, on the executive session deliberations over the disposition and development agreement, proposed disposition and development agreement with CenterCal, and also the debriefing we got from the city manager after the termination of the negotiations. I think that covers 3 executive sessions.
That's fine.
Okay, so that's a
amended.
clarification.
So, has there been a second?
Yes.
Can we have discussion?
Yes.
So are you going to take the end of the story and put it out there? I think you got to take the whole story. So every executive session that involved any of the Rivers project needs to be out there.
I don't mind doing that. I mean, it's a long process. I'm not wanting to necessarily, but let's put it this way. There is some logistical and cost concerns. What I'd like to see done is just for the ones this year, that the tapes actually be put up on the website so people can access them. And then the ones prior years, just anybody who wants to, request them through the
That's only
public.
part of the story, though, Jim.
No, if you waive the executive session, if you waive the privilege, it would apply to all of them.
Can I get a clarification? Because when we first discussed this, we were going to have transcripts made, and they were estimated to cost about $200 to transcribe, and then you just said recordings on the web. So I wanted to make sure that
If the
We
body
had the same-
wants to develop transcripts, that's fine. I don't want to develop transcripts going back 6 years, because I think that's going to be a cost item. But I don't mind doing transcripts for the 3 sessions. I don't know if there were 3 or 4. I think there were 3.
You're only going to tell part of the story, then.
Well, waiving the privilege on everything would allow the story to be told, and people would pay. A journalist can come in and listen to it on the tape.
If I might, Commissioner, a journalist or anyone could pay and get a copy of the tape. Is that right, Nancy? Is that correct? That anyone can get a
in
copy
answer
if they
to the
waive the
question,
privilege?
yes.
For whatever extended period, whether it's all the way back to the beginning or the last 3, whatever they decide. But if they waive the privilege, the least burdensome thing for us is to simply say the privilege is waived. Anyone, whether it's the media or anybody else who wants copies of tapes, can submit requests for tapes. We duplicate tapes and hand them over for a fee, right? Is that the easiest thing for your office?
Well, I haven't listened from beginning to end to the actual recording itself.
Right.
But, it's done on a small recorder, and you don't know who is
Right.
always speaking, because when you speak, you don't say
Right.
your name in front
Right.
of it.
We're only releasing the records we have.
That's
and the records
that's
we
correct.
have.
So I can't guarantee that they're excellent quality like your videos online, because
Right.
these are done
And some
in
of them,
executive
there's
sessions.
inaudible sections, just so you know, it's a different standard than you're used to with your regular meetings.
And I think that's why we discussed wanting to have them transcribe, particularly for the meetings that
If Phil is
we were
amenable,
speaking of.
I will agree with you that the sessions this year should be transcribed.
And that's your Urban Renewal Commission expense and time. It'll take a little time to do that. And I think time is of the essence.
We don't need them transcribed, Jim. We just need to be able to talk about them. And if Steve wants to listen to them, let him listen.
Are you okay with that? Just having the
I'm
waiver?
just saying that that's the discussion I recall from
Well, to
when
make
this
it
came
easier,
up before. We
to make it-
had talked about
Faster.
To
Just
make
right.
it logistically easier, I'll agree with Phil that we waive the privilege and leave it at that.
Okay, so we're back to my original motion. Just waive the privilege with respect to this negotiation.
For how long back?
You want to go all the way back?
Yeah.
That is fine with me.
May I suggest something? In terms of the negotiation occurred really with CenterCal coming back to us, and that was this year. I mean, if you could go. I mean, there are 2 periods. CenterCal was before us before, but we never got involved in negotiations at that particular time that I'm aware of. The negotiations started this year.
Well, I agree, and that's what's relevant to the political issue that we're faced with right
And
now.
so I think the story in terms of the reasons of the whatever breakdown occurred were based on items that we had within the negotiation piece. That all occurred this year.
Yes.
I don't think you have to go way back in history.
Okay. Waiving the privilege for this year.
Yeah.
I will amend my motion for the 3rd time. We'll waive the privilege only for this year, 2012. What year is it? 2012.
And I will second that again.
Call the question.
Question?
no, sorry.
Commissioner Nocita?
Aye.
Commissioner Mum?
No, for the reason I stated.
Commissioner Roth?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Neely?
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw?
No.
Commissioner Yates?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Edgar?
Aye.
And Chair Walters?
Yes.
8 to 2. Motion
you all.
passed. I do have a question, if I may, Madam Chair.
Oh, yes.
If it could be clarified exactly what you mean by waiving the privilege. What does that, I understand that it means that the information that was in those meetings can go into the public, but are you expecting anything from staff regarding that?
No.
Well, if someone makes a public records request.
Right.
Yeah, we'll do
Other
it.
than that.
No. No.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're on to agenda item 5A, allocation of urban renewal contingency funds for
Consent calendar?
the alleyway study, downtown alleyway study and construction.
How much time do I have?
5
I mean,
minutes.
realistically,
Yeah.
is it
5 minutes?
What time is
5
the
minutes?
schedule to go through?
7:30?
Pardon?
We got to go. We still have to
An
talk.
executive session.
5:30.
Right.
5:30, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, so I have 5 minutes, thank you. I brought up this issue at the last meeting, and what we're taking this from is the adopted circulation plan for the downtown. And in it just specifically addresses pedestrian alleyways.
Adopted by whom, by the way?
This was adopted by the City Commission.
Okay.
So it's a capital improvement document for the city and planning document. For alleyways, it specifically said that improved downtown walkability and new activity spaces can be created by converting alleys to pedestrian walkways. The design should consider lighting, active edge along sides of buildings, clear sight lines from parking to Main Street, limiting to access to deliveries, service vehicles. And then one of the next steps then in the action plan was to develop design concepts for pedestrian alleys and traffic analysis for additional two-way streets on 8th and 9th. Now, we're doing that, the additional traffic analysis. So what we were proposing is that the Urban Renewal Commission consider using some of the contingency funds in the budget for 2011-12 for planning the 3 alleyways that are in the 800 and 900 blocks that are going to be closed at the sidewalk with the downtown Main Street Sidewalks project. And I'll quickly run through these slides. I wanted to show you some pictures of our existing alleys to give you a sense of why this could be very, very exciting for the downtown and why it was included in this document. This is the alleyway in the 800 block. This is looking the other direction. This is the the first one is the 800 block. This is the 900 block. And this is some just really general ideas of what could that look like. I think I talked to you about it, that every alleyway will have its own purpose and services needs because there are different, the property owners that abut them and even the users from what's nearby, where am I going perspective. There will be different, so they will not all look the same. They may have similar design details and themes. But here's some examples of what the alleys could look like. And this, to me, really would be a great improvement in the downtown. This one's a little larger than we could do, but it still gives you a sense. Some of it can be very simple, like the lighting here. That's not fancy lighting. Some of the cobbles are more expensive. The concrete work is more affordable. But trying to create these spaces as not only serving the vehicle, which they used to serve, but now they are probably multifunctional for bikes, peds. People may be sitting out reading a book, whatever the case might be, and then service vehicles where needed. So I also mentioned last time that, so you'd be in the know that ODOT's recommending closing the alleys under the Arch Bridge. I don't think we're quite ready to approach that as a project. I would recommend saving that for a future project, perhaps through the Transportation Growth Management program, because it is an ODOT facility, the bridge is, and they would want to be involved. We do have some folks here from the downtown Main Street area. I'm not sure if they wanted to speak or not, but so what I'm asking for is $30,000 for developing concept plans for the 3 alleys, and then $75,000 for construction. This is a real big fat guess, so because we've never done this in Oregon City, so I don't have really good construction numbers to use to give you an estimate, but I think we could do something. We might not even do the whole alley in that block. We might just do the surface, and we'd see what we can do, and that would be now for your discussion.
Thank you. We do have a public person from the public that wishes to speak. Ryan Smith.
Hi there. My name is Ryan Smith. I'm a resident of Oregon City. I own 2 buildings downtown and some restaurants. I'm excited about this project. I've been talking about alleys downtown for a long time. I learned this lesson the hard way when I bought the first building where Cypress and Weinstock is. It's a 7,200 square foot building. And just thought, well, I'll just put a for lease sign on there and somebody's going to come rent out this 7,200 square feet. It's going to be great. I'm going to collect my rent check and go on. Well, it sat there for a year, and the education there was that people want to rent about 1,200 to 1,500 square feet. That's it. And so what you've got to do is break all these big buildings that we have downtown up into, small spaces. Only way you can do that is buildings that have a corner or the alleys are another way that you can totally maximize these buildings and put storefronts on the sides and make use of them. Because after the first 1,500 square feet of a building, it's useless square footage as far as really being able to do something with it. So that's a real motivator. That gets a lot of jobs downtown. That gets a lot of extra businesses and just good tax base. It's a no-brainer. What you're putting in place there is just allowing these property owners to everybody will benefit from it. And I've got 5 businesses in the building there on the corner of, I think it's 9th and Main. It was once one. There at 8th and Main, we kind of took the whole building now, but it's 3 units in there, and there's 2 different DBAs in there. So that's a really big thing for these alley streets, because we're going to run out of corners. And you can't really do what you can do with the other buildings that are locked in, and I pioneered this, is we started putting retail spaces on the back sides of the building that would face Railroad Avenue, and that's also really important. Railroad Avenue is very, very important to the downtown, and to be able to bust those out on both sides. So the alleys serve as not only a conduit, but also enables those buildings to maximize themselves, which is good for everybody. And then it also would then connect with what I hope is a future plan to have a Railroad Avenue sidewalk. So it really just connects all the dots, maximizes the buildings, more tax base. So that's really the main thrust for me. Also, it makes our neat downtown even neater. And every consultant that's come in here that we've had, and there's been a bunch, whether it's parking or all the various ones, have all spoke to better pedestrian access, better lighting. Every single one, if there's a common ground in there, it's about making the walkways better for walking down, make it safe. And then, of course, if you have businesses all along there, that is a safety feature in itself. So I challenge this body to make a decision tonight, and let's make a decision. I dare you to just get it going, and let's let it roll. And as a construction guy, I can speak to Nancy's budget. I think a lot can get done for that, and Nancy's proven that she's fiscally sound with those things, and I think that's a pretty realistic budget. So let's do it. Let's try it out. Thank you.
I might add that we're also trying to look for opportunities to do a quarter plan for railroad for the future as well, because when I look at railroad, I get all kinds of ideas in my head, and so that we all need to collaborate on that and get public input and all that stuff. But that would be another project down the line as well. There's a lot to do.
Okay, Commissioner Edgar.
I like alleyways. I think that I've seen them used very successfully. However, I do not want to allocate construction funds at this point. I think that that's premature, because I think we need to also look at some sharing, this allocation and what are the individual property owners going to be bringing to the table that's part of this renewal project of those alleyways. And for us to just go ahead and give out money at this point, I think we need to have a little bit more discussion about the prioritization. We need to look at how do we get the most bang for the buck across a lot of areas. And I had discussions with the city manager the other day, and one of the discussion points was, where's the money going to come from? And it comes back as to what are the highest priorities that we have. And I think this is a very important issue, and very important for us to proceed ahead with all of the planning. But before we start allocating construction funds, I want to see how this is like where we have a project to help a building where there's 50% participation. We're kind of stepping past that concept, and I don't think we should be at this point.
Madam Chair. Commissioner, I appreciate what you said about the contribution, but we also have the conduit idea that you brought up at the last meeting that I wasn't here at, which is another great idea, which I hope to get to in my reports tonight, to get a little bit of permission from you to at least explore that idea that you had. We won't, again, if you think about that in terms of an analogy here, there's not going to be an individual contribution there either if we fast track this as you suggested at the last meeting. So I just want to say that our city, my office, City Hall upstairs is full of plans that are on shelves, and I hope that this commission will not only, if you're going to pass a plan, also give us an opportunity to construct something for you, to see if you like it, to see if it's going to work, to see if the city is going to flourish from that. You've got already a parking circulation study down there that's been adopted, and we're just trying to get something built instead of just having more plans on the shelf. So,
You know, that the conduit thing is right down what brings the most
Right.
jobs, development, potential to our city, and
it doesn't have to be either or.
and that's right. But when we get into finite allocations of bucks, we need to make sure that we're allocating things in the smartest way we can.
We have some other speakers. Commissioner Shaw.
Well, I was kind of on the opposition of this when it was brought up at the last meeting, and I think my thought was that it was kind of the alleys to nowhere, but after further review of that and then finding out what the potential of Railroad Avenue and these back spaces, and then walking by Ryan's alley there at the verdict there with this nice little, did a great job there. I've kind of changed my mind there, but now, Nancy, when you did your presentation, you didn't mention about there was going to be access to businesses to the sides of that, like Ryan's talking. I didn't see that part of your thing. I just like it was a straight shot through this alley, but now you're thinking there's going to be actually entries and stuff
Well,
off
we
of this?
wouldn't, that would be the property owners or the
What?
building owners would need to make those improvements in the future. But that's the idea of activating the alleyways, part of it is based on that premise that you could then open up the buildings to more directions.
Okay, I like it, yeah.
Mayor Neely, and then Mr. Nishida.
I tend to agree with Paul to a certain extent. I'm talking about the conduits, I'm talking about the design aspect. We put in monies now for construction. We don't know which alley that's going to be. We should look at the design first, I personally think. But I feel still very strongly about the design of the alley should include the 7th Street portion. That we know we're going to have the area opened up on the Arch Bridge. I think it would be very good to have a design aspect of those two very dangerous approaches to get to McLaughlin on either side of, and away from McLaughlin on either side of the Arch Bridge. Would be far better as a pedestrian alleyways, and I don't know why we wouldn't include it as part of the design concept at this point. And so that's what I'm going to end up supporting.
I think I'm trying to bite this off in pieces. That would be a larger project, cost more money. We'd need to have ODOT's involvement, and things get very complicated, introducing other agencies sometimes. And then I think what I'm doing is I'm following the plan that we've carefully developed, and I think it will. If we do it step by step, we will get something accomplished. And I also think that with the improvements we're making on Main Street, if people are coming off the elevator, we want them to go down Main Street, not necessarily go to McLaughlin and go to the underneath the bridge, where I personally don't think that's the nicest part of McLaughlin at this point. If we bring them down Main Street, through the alleyways, whatever, and then go down to the 10th Street and get over to the Willamette Terrace, and then they're into the John Storm Park, and they're, it's just gorgeous over there now. So that would be my only, if we would need more money, and it's going to be more complicated. And as it is, those alleyways are going to be closed, so there won't be dangerous.
They're going to be closed because you're doing a sidewalk project.
Because we're doing a sidewalk project, and because ODOT has determined that they need to be closed to reopen that intersection.
So they will
with
never be
two-way
reopened
traffic.
to
They will have
vehicular traffic.
removable bollards for deliveries. But the design of it is, I would love to do that too, but it's biting off a lot.
Can you state again what plan you're referencing for my benefit? Thanks.
Yeah, and I couldn't find it on the web today. I searched
it's
for
on
it.
the web.
I typed in the exact title, and it did not come up, except in the last
It's the downtown
except in last
circulation.
week's
Yeah,
minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Last month's minutes.
Okay, I've got Commissioner Nishida on.
Yeah, just very quickly, I'll just say I concur with pretty much every point that Commissioner Edgar made as far as contribution and planning first. And I'll also make the point that Mayor Neely raised the issue of visioning at the beginning of the meeting, and that, if I recall, was funded in contingency, and now this is coming for contingency dollars too. And I'm just curious as to what extent budgeting contingency money for this will conflict with the contingency we allocated for vision.
Visioning of what?
The north end. So that's something that's going to be on the work session for discussion, and we
But I
don't know
guess
that yet.
the point is that we don't know how much that's going to cost.
Or when
And
that
if we
would
do
happen.
this construction as well as planning, we might preclude ourselves from doing what we want to do when we go through that work session and decide how much we want to do as far as that north end visioning.
Commissioner Gates, are you finished?
Yeah.
Thank you.
First, I like the idea of improving alleys. There are a lot of alleys in this town, but there are a lot of alleys that aren't in downtown. I own an alley, and I asked to have it closed once with a conversation with you about 6 months ago and said I wanted to close it to vehicles, to leave it open for pedestrians, and you told me no.
I said we'd have to take it to the neighborhood association.
I said, would I get your support? And you said no. And I think that we should close a lot of these alleys, and I really think it's premature to pick at Ryan's alley over all the other alleys in this town, including the alleys up
My
here.
alley's not on the table.
Okay, maybe not Ryan's.
my alley's privately owned. too,
Okay, well,
for the
then
record.
that's one of the things that we really need to think about in terms of what Paul said, most efficient use of these resources. One of the things, I mean, my neighbor Jim McCarter has an alley which is pothole-ridden, and could be improved dramatically. People actually use that alley as opposed to walking to nowhere on Railroad Avenue. It seems to me that we should wait to do the alleys that you're suggesting until we get Railroad Avenue fixed. It's a walk to nowhere, in my opinion, at this point. It seems to me that we ought to consider granting title to the Ryans of the world and the Jim McCarters of the world in exchange for them doing something to create a really nice pedestrian thing and give them space so we can put in his doors and more utilize this thing. We don't need to spend this money. We can get this development with private sector dollars, in my opinion. I know that I can do that alley. I used to own it between McCarter's, between Super Torta, a lot cheaper than $75,000. If you turned it over to a private sector guy who didn't have to pay Davis-Bacon wages, he could beat these numbers in half and get the exact same improvements with less money and no burden on the taxpayers. There are 1,000 ways to skin this cat. After all, the city owns the dirt and doesn't need it. It ought to be giving it away. There ought to be an inventory of alleys within the service district, within our urban rural district. We should categorize them. We should walk them. We should find out what the building owners next door think about it before we spend any money, really, and decide who's the most excited about having their alley in their name. I'd sure like to have my alley in my name. I'd be willing to do something for that.
Thank
So
you.
I would vote no on this at this point until we rethink the way we spend the money.
Commissioner Smith?
So I think Ryan stated it very well in terms of, I walked down there so many times and looked at it. There are issues with railroad, obviously, but we want to get to a point where we can deal with those. The two buildings that have opened themselves to Railroad Avenue, you can see the potential of what could happen with all the other buildings. I guess, Mike, so I'm really supportive of this, and I hope we move forward on it at some point. It doesn't look like that'll be tonight, but here's what I really think is the problem. We never finished our goals session. It was a complete disaster because we didn't get focused on any realm at all. Our meeting times are short enough that we don't have time to discuss these at any length, so we don't have enough time to discuss them to come to a decision. I don't know why we don't have a series of 10 work sessions until we figure it out, or 5 or 3. Well, we're not even getting to, we have to start having meetings that have time to discuss it, because we can't make any decisions. We're not making any decisions. And because everyone is going in different directions, we don't have a vision of what we're doing. And until we do that, I don't think we're going to move forward at all. And it's exhausting to sit through these meetings. It's exhausting to know that you're going to come sit here for an hour and not accomplish anything. So I don't know if we really should title the work sessions with any topic at all, other than what the hell are we doing? And then
That'd be a good.
I love it.
and then we can figure out how to decide on it.
Can urban renewal be moved to a separate night?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't remember having the problems to this level that we have. I mean, we had separate work sessions before, right? I mean, I don't remember. I mean, I guess we've always been crunched for time, but I mean, we're already 10 minutes over this meeting, and we haven't even got through half of it, and so now we're already late to, the next.
In light of getting anywhere on this agenda item tonight, I would like to just mention one thing in terms of getting a plan that is approved by the city. If buildings do come and redevelop, then we have something to say, this is what you need to do. What we have now is nothing, which means you can't exact those kinds of improvements out of a private developer. So getting plans for these alleyways, I think, is really important. And then building one is cool, it's awesome, but that's a decision that I'm not here to make. So it's yours.
Okay, I've just got a note that we've got a lot of people waiting outside for the executive session, and I know we have a lot to discuss, so I'm looking for some direction from...
I would like to make a motion.
Yes.
I have a question
first.
Okay, Kathy Roth was next on the
Okay,
floor.
Nancy, I just returned from Dallas, and it's a dying city, and they have a lot of alleys. And what's happened is the city has said, we can't take care of them anymore. They were beautiful, but you walk down these dead, poorly lit, the light bulbs are out, it's a mess. Do we have the money to take care of these once they're in? The person at a time.
Well, I think they'd be different care. They wouldn't be driven on all the time. I mean, it would be probably, you might get some property ownership on the lighting.
The
and taking
trees
care
were
of them.
dead, there's no watering, it was a mess.
I think that's something we'd work with the Main Street organization on. I think there'd be a lot of desire. If you did one, you'd want to make sure it stays looking very nice. You could have maintenance agreements. I mean, that's something we could
But
cover.
is it in the city budget?
We could cover that in the plans, is to say, how are we going to maintain these? And I think that's a good idea from my perspective.
Sounds like we need more discussion.
Dealing with the time issue, I'm looking for direction from the city manager. Would you recommend that we schedule another hearing to continue this discussion?
I'd like to move that we put it to the next work session that we've just created several things on and discuss how to design the program in a little bit more cost-effective way. Because I really think that's a great idea to do something with these alleys. I really do. I just don't know if the city even wants to own the title to them, and that's one of the questions.
You need public access.
But what I think you should do, Phil, frankly, is work on whether you're interested in that concept as a policy. Because you're talking about designing the program, that's our job. We'll figure that out.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important to...
I'm not sure I agree with that.
Okay. All right. Well, you can design the program then, and yes, you definitely need another work session or two.
I would like to make a motion that we enter into the first phase of the planning of the alleyways at this time.
The design portion.
The design portion at this time.
Second.
Yeah. Concept plans.
Concept plan. Okay.
That's the 35.
I think maybe the person here that was speaking had a reply to one of the commissioners. Can you make it like 5
Part of
seconds?
discussion.
Yeah, I can. I just wanted to. I think you guys all made some great comments. Starting with Paul, he was first, and Phil comment on that, and it's about the owner contribution. The owner contribution is, you're gonna, if you build it, they will come, right? So you're it's city infrastructure right now. So picture that like it's just like 8th Street. Like if there weren't sidewalks there, you know what I mean? Like if you put the sidewalks there, you've now created that opportunity for the building owner to put in. So their contribution will be great because it's very expensive to cut holes in the side of buildings and
Redevelopment.
and put
is
firewalls in and put new heating HVACs in. Put bathrooms in. It's a huge investment, way more than you could ever imagine. It's a lot of money, and down some of these alleys, Paul, you can get a lot of storefronts in there. So I'm just answering your question is you will absolutely get the owner contribution if you pave the road. Okay, so I forget there was a couple other comments that I. Okay, well here's the deal. You got 3 alleys, like paralysis by analysis. You guys can keep tabling this thing, or why don't you take a risk on one of these alleys? I would challenge you to allocate money for the planning and for one of the alleys. Let's just you have these questions you're wondering. You got to take some risk with our tax dollars. I please take some risk. There's not going to be certainty. There's not going to be certainty to every decision. So you've got so many alleys. Why don't you do a pilot project with one of them and see if the owners step up and do stuff and see if we're getting a return? Because this is what it's about. It's urban renewal. It's economic investment on our behalf. So let's not just keep tabling this thing.
We're not tabling.
We got a
There's a
motion.
motion, and it was seconded for the planning.
For a plan.
Question?
I just want to make one comment there. The 105,000 would take a bulk of the contingency. Am I right? We've got a total of what in the contingency? 193,000. So it's more than half the contingency.
That's the point I was raising.
Yeah.
And I would,
Anyway,
in discussion of your
call,
motion.
call the question.
My question.
Commissioner Nocita?
Aye.
Commissioner Mum?
Aye.
Commissioner Roth?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Neely?
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Yates?
No.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Edgar?
Aye.
And Chair Walters?
No. Motion passes
Motion
8 to 2.
8 to 2.
Okay. We've got a lot of people here waiting.
I'm waiving my reports.
Okay. So we're going to proceed with the co-agenda item.
It needs to be extremely limited. I would appreciate, we're bringing this back on the 21st. Either it's limited to about 5 minutes with no questions at this point, and we'll dedicate, I mean, if it's up to the commission on the agenda for the 21st, but there's a lot of material that needs to be covered, and we weren't able to address any of it tonight. And I would recommend putting it on for the 21st and allocating significant time to address it.
As well as getting the handouts I think these folks brought. So.
We do have, I think, some people that want to speak to this. We should, I don't know, they've come to it.
If we can afford.
It's your prerogative.
Can you do anything in 5 minutes, guys?
We can make it very quick.
Okay, good. You're giving us an update, basically, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, okay.
And Tony, if we have questions from this, we won't ask tonight, but we can email you guys
You can
then.
email them to me, and we'll make
Okay.
sure that we get those.
Okay.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. We're delighted to have an opportunity to present an update. We're very excited. There's light at the end of the tunnel. And with that, I'll let Ed go ahead with the PowerPoint.
Maybe it's light at the end of the alley.
I think you're right.
You're familiar with the master plan. Let's see if we've got a pointer here that works. We've got the mixed-use area here, the 210 apartments. Then we have 196 condos, and we have 80,000 square feet of office. This office over here is 68, which has 2 restaurants in it, and this could potentially have restaurants also. The goal is consistent as we started out to create new jobs both in the construction and the permanent level, which would be at the offices and at the apartment units. The public parks, which were over to the right, and if we had the other site plan, which didn't come up, we could show that, but we have the full park at the north end, which will have access for boats and canoers, and then the esplanade, which will connect the whole thing. In terms of the improvements to the environment, Randy, you had some items which you wanted to talk to and relative to that?
Well, there's a bunch of stuff going on there, but to make it quick, we're increasing both the quantity and the quality of the habitat area. We have a committee now that's in support of enhancing the environment and the habitat, and we'll be using low-impact design elements in terms of dealing with stormwater, with bioswales and rain gardens and flow dispersers, a lot of stuff.
The basic issue with why the project has been slowed down here, a couple of things. Having the correct capital partners. As you know, we had 2 capital partners which did not perform. At this point in time, we've made a decision to modify the condos to rentable condos, leasable. It's a very bankable, it's the highest bankable thing in the community, financial community right now, is for lease apartments and or condominiums that are for lease. It's probably the lowest vacancy that we've seen. We've built several hundreds of units in this community. That's an exceptional time. The expectation is that it'll increase about 10% in the next year in terms of the rents, and we're competing with West Lynn up the corridor. We believe that our rents are right on target. We've had a third-party marketing study done on that, and it shows that it's very viable. Since we've last met, we haven't just been sitting on the sidelines. We've invested another commitment for almost $800,000. We've redesigned all of the waterfront units. They are now, instead of being about 40 feet apart, they are 80 feet apart between the buildings. They are a little bit smaller. We've brought them down in terms of what's happening in the general economy now. We brought on the engineers to redesign the infrastructure. Last 2 weeks, we went out to bid for that infrastructure, and that was brought in yesterday. We shared that with Bob Collison here in the city. We're on budget for the $7 million. We have between 6.3 and 7.8 with the bids that came back in. These were bids which were not for letting a contract, so they'll still, we have an opportunity to crank that down, we believe, in terms of the cost. So I think what we have been doing is to try to create the new part of the project, which is the waterfront, in place of doing the 210 apartments. And I think the beauty of it is that it becomes the focal point of the whole project. The project looks complete, it has a high quality, and we're excited about doing that. In the 21st meeting, it would be our intent to bring a capital partner to the table with us. We'll have the budget really ground down by then, and we'd be expecting for you to accept that budget. It'll be within the $7 million. If it's over, we'll write the check for that within a certain range. One of the reasons for making this modification, the apartments had a value of about $24 million. The condos for lease will have a value of about 35, so we're really increasing the potential increment that the city will get off of this first round of investment. And really what we like is the fact that it's going to show the project as a very high quality and finished. By doing the apartments before, there was 3 buildings that would actually show off of Main Street. They were up higher. You didn't get a feel of having a totally complete project. The other thing with doing these condos as leasable units, we can build them all at one time. If you're doing them for sale, there's no lender that would allow you to do more than probably 30 to 40 units at a time. So we can have it all built in place, and when the market does turn around, we have the ability to take and convert those to condos. And when we do that, the value ordinarily goes up about 60%. So it adds another, instead of 35, it'll be about $65 million. So it goes up substantially. The Phase 1 and Phase 2 infrastructure that I was talking about are these, the green area and the yellow area. That's the $7 million. It gets all the roads put in, gets all of the dirt moved, basically ends up with finished paths. In terms of sustainability, you might walk through this in improving the environment, Randy.
Well, it's a very thin line that shows the existing slope, which, if any of you, I'm sure you've all been out there, is very steep. And in fact, it's probably steeper than what's illustrated here. And we look at the amount of area that's going to be taken out, the cut, and then that goes up above to create an area that's above the 100-year flood elevation. And this habitat now, where the existing slope is very minimal. There's not really that much habitat. It's not rated as a good habitat. But it will be completely replanted. All the invasive non-native species will be removed and will be replanted with appropriate native riparian landscaping. It'll create a really nice environment.
This area here, there was a study done by a third party to how to save those trees that are along the bank. This is the ordinary high water line, so we're about 5 feet above that. And what we'll do is bring in rockeries to protect those trees, and we've defined those trees specifically, so there'll be an opportunity to save trees that are on the bank.
Ed, I'm sorry, we need to wrap up.
Okay. Phasing, we've already talked about that. I'll move along. These are just pictures of what the project will look like. Looking towards the west of the condos, the office building. This is a visual of the condo buildings. They are security. They have elevators. They aren't apartments, quote unquote. They're considerably more expensive. The basic finishes will be reduced at this point, and then when we convert them, we'll actually upgrade those, and we've done that in the past. Another visual on those units, looking down the corridor, the apartments. The intent is not to just leave that sitting there on the sidelines. So we have a verbal agreement. We're trying to convert that at this point to where we'll actually pick that property up from the Sladen development entity, and that will be our next phase. The reason that we can do 2 sets of rental units, this garden type of property will have a lower price point and will still work within the market. While this is under construction, the waterfront units will take and improve the road along the apartment site so that it will actually have a nice visual when you drive by, and then up on top will be the flat pad. The office, the center, which we would look for having different venues for Saturday markets, things of that nature. The interior courtyard of the offices, looking down the corridor, where we have the water sports center and the park. We figured that's a way that we can actually give back to the community, which we've done in Lake Oswego, which was worked out very well. Not a large commitment in terms of dollars, but a nice commitment in terms of the activities that will be available. The opportunity to have the amphitheater. This is the mixed-use building. A couple of restaurants on each end, looking out over the water. So what we believe is that the project will in fact become a reality. We'll create the jobs, it'll be a major asset, and we will improve the environment. We're going to, on the 21st, we'll ask for you to sign the DDP, which is the detailed development plan for both the infrastructure and for the condos. We would like a 9-month extension to do this work and be able to crank it up. If we started now, if we had everything in place, it would probably cost us $300,000 to $350,000 to build this in the wet weather. We don't want to do that. We've made revisions to the Phase 1 and Phase 2 infrastructure plan. We'd like you to approve that and approve the operating agreement. We've got a lease which the city needs to finalize. We'll do a joint parking agreement. We'll have you approve the investment budget, which is basically the $7 million. There'll be a review of the operating agreement, which looks like that's twice. You can do that twice if you'd like. And you have to approve the construction contract and the contractor. And then we'll have an agreement to have public access for the Esplanade and how that's monitored. And then we'll pull foundation permits, and we'll record a construction loan before that 9-month period. The intent is to try to start in April. So that's a quick overview.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a request that this PowerPoint be put in a form that can be emailed to us.
Yes, and Nancy has that.
Okay.
It's too large to email, but we'll figure out a way to get it to you.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get it to you.
If there isn't any issue as to ex parte contact, certainly give us a call and we can walk through with anybody that has questions. Some of the unique things that we did, which James Nacita brought up, is we've redesigned those buildings so that the elevations have more articulation on the roof lines. I think that we've spent a lot of time figuring out. So thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you the 21st.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. So.
City manager.
I move that we adjourn on this. Do you guys want to vote on the minutes real quickly?
I move the minutes.
Second.
Pardon me? We have a
Move the
motion
minutes.
to move and a second.
On the
to approve
minutes.
the minutes.
Who's second? I'm sorry.
Jim Nocita.
Okay.
Question.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Motion passes. Okay. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very
I'm
much.
going to have to ask you to clear. We're going to be using this.